I spent 2 years of my life rebuilding that 1,967 Mustang GT Fastback. Every evening after work, every weekend, thousands of hours of labor, and over $30,000 invested in parts alone. So imagine my shock when I returned from a business trip to find it missing from my assigned parking spot. The real gut punch came when I called my parents in a panic, thinking it had been stolen, only to hear my father say casually, "Oh, we gave that to your brother for his birthday. He legally owns it now." They had somehow forged my signature on the title transfer, handed my pride and joy to my entitled younger brother, and expected me to just accept it. What followed was the hardest decision I ever made, to file criminal charges against my own parents. Before I tell you what happened next, and how this changed our family forever, let me know where you are watching from. And hit that like button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who crossed the line. Cars have been my passion since I was old enough to distinguish a Ford from a Chevy. While other kids had posters of superheroes or sports stars, my childhood bedroom walls were plastered with images of classic American muscle cars. My father occasionally encouraged this interest when I was young, taking me to car shows and teaching me basic maintenance, though his enthusiasm always seemed conditional on my brother Marcus showing interest as well. When Marcus inevitably lost interest, my father's participation waned, leaving me to pursue my automotive passion largely on my own. Throughout my teenage years, I worked after school at a local garage learning from mechanics who recognized my natural aptitude. By 18, I could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, and had developed a particular fascination with Ford Mustangs of the 1960s era. Their perfect balance of power style and American automotive history represented everything I loved about cars. After college, where I studied mechanical engineering while working part-time, I secured a position with an automotive design firm that allowed me financial stability and the eventual opportunity to pursue my dream project, restoring a classic Mustang from the ground up. For 3 years, I saved, diligently researched exhaustively, and networked with restoration specialists and parts dealers across the country. The opportunity came on an otherwise unremarkable Saturday in April when I spotted a listing on an online marketplace for a 1967 Mustang GT Fastback in Highland Green. The seller described it as needs complete restoration, not running significant rust issues. The photos showed a vehicle that many would consider beyond salvation. Faded paint, missing interior components, evident body damage, and an engine compartment that looked more like an archaeological excavation site than a functional powertrain. Where others saw a hopeless case, I recognized the solid bones of a legendary vehicle. After negotiating the price down to $8,000 based on the extensive work needed, I arranged a trailer and brought my project home to the 2-car garage I had specifically sought when renting my apartment. The restoration became my second job and primary passion. I documented everything meticulously, both for personal satisfaction and insurance purposes. Each removed component was photographed, labeled, and either restored or replaced. I sourced original parts when possible, consulted with specialists for the trickiest aspects, and spent countless hours researching factory specifications to ensure authenticity. While immersed in this project, the complex dynamics of my family continued their familiar patterns. My younger brother Marcus, 4 years, my junior, had always been the focal point of my parents' attention and resources. Where I had worked through college with minimal family support, Marcus received full financial backing, including a new car every 2 years, despite frequently dropping classes and changing majors. This pattern of preferential treatment had been a constant in our family structure since childhood. When I received a scholarship to attend engineering school, my achievement was acknowledged with casual congratulations. When Marcus was accepted to a less competitive program years later, my parents hosted an elaborate celebration and purchased him a new laptop and car as study aids. I had made peace with this reality years ago, focusing on building my own life and finding validation through my career achievements and personal projects rather than parental approval. The physical distance between us, I lived about 40 miles from my parents' suburban home, helped maintain a cordial, if somewhat distant relationship. We gathered for major holidays and occasional family dinners. Interactions I approached with measured expectations and emotional boundaries. My brother and I maintained a similarly detached relationship. While not openly hostile, we had little in common beyond shared DNA and family history. Marcus seemed to view my self-sufficiency with a mixture of resentment and dismissal, occasionally making comments about my obsession with cars or questioning why anyone would waste money on old junk when referring to my restoration project. Throughout the 2-year restoration process, I occasionally shared progress photos of the Mustang in family group texts or during holiday gatherings. My parents responded with polite but minimal interest, while Marcus typically ignored these updates entirely. The lack of enthusiasm from my family did nothing to diminish my own satisfaction as I watched the Mustang transform under my dedicated care. When the restoration was finally complete, the result exceeded even my own expectations. The Highland green paint gleamed under perfect lighting. The rebuilt 390 V8 engine purred with period-correct power, and every chrome accent and interior detail had been restored to factory specifications or better. I registered the vehicle in my name, obtained collector car insurance with an agreed value of $40,000, reflecting my investment of $32,000, plus the appreciated value of such a carefully restored classic, and proudly drove it on weekends and to classic car gatherings. For 11 months, the Mustang brought me unalloyed joy. Then came the business trip to Chicago, a week-long conference where I was presenting our firm's latest innovations in sustainable materials for automotive applications. I had arranged for a neighbor to periodically check on my apartment, and garage declined. Marcus's unexpected offer to car sit an interest. I found suspicious given his previous dismissal of the vehicle and left with the usual traveler's mild anxiety, but no specific concerns. The conference went exceptionally well. My presentation received positive feedback, potentially opening new professional opportunities. I returned home late on a Friday evening, eager for a weekend drive in the Mustang after a successful but exhausting week away. The empty parking spot registered first as confusion, then escalating alarm. My neighbor confirmed he had seen the car in its usual place just 2 days earlier. With growing dread, I called the local police to report a possible theft, then reached out to my parents, not because I suspected their involvement, but simply as part of informing family about this significant personal crisis. My father's casual response, "Oh, we gave that to your brother for his birthday. He legally owns it now," was so disconnected from reality that for a moment I thought he had misunderstood which car I was discussing. The clarification that followed, delivered in his matter-of-fact tone, confirmed the incomprehensible. They had somehow transferred ownership of my meticulously restored Mustang to Marcus without my knowledge or consent. In that moment, standing in an empty garage with my father's voice emanating from my phone speaker, as if he were discussing something as trivial as borrowing a lawn tool, the foundation of what I understood about family ownership and the Prost boundaries cracked irreparably beneath my feet. The drive to my parents' suburban home passed in a blur of disbelief and mounting anger. Questions cycled through my mind. How could they possibly think this was acceptable? What legal mechanism did they imagine gave them the right to transfer property that was unquestionably mine? Most disturbingly, how had they managed to execute such a transfer without my signature or knowledge? As I turned onto their tree-lined street, the answers to at least some of these questions came into horrifying focus. There, parked prominently in their circular driveway, as if on display, sat my Mustang, the culmination of my passion, expertise, and thousands of hours of painstaking work. Marcus lounged against its front fender, beer in hand, showing it off to 2 friends who were examining the engine compartment with the hood carelessly propped open. I parked blocking the driveway and approached with a deceptive calm that masked the turmoil within. "That is my car," I stated flatly, as 4 heads turned toward me. "I am taking it home now." Marcus's expression shifted from surprise to smug confidence. "Actually, bro, it is mine now. Mom and Dad signed it over to me for my 26th birthday. Got the paperwork and everything." His friends, sensing tension, mumbled excuses and departed quickly, leaving the 3 of us in an increasingly hostile standoff. That is impossible, I replied, struggling to maintain composure. The title is in my name. I never signed anything transferring ownership. My mother emerged from the house, her expression a practiced mixture of surprise and mild disappointment. Damon, we did not expect you until tomorrow. We were going to call you to explain everything properly. Explain what properly? How you stole my car. My father appeared behind her, his authoritative presence, a familiar pressure. Watch your tone, son. Nobody stole anything. The car has been properly transferred to your brother through legal channels. What legal channels allow you to transfer a car that does not belong to you? A moment of uncomfortable silence followed before my father responded with the explanation that would ultimately lead to their undoing. You left the title in your old desk in the spare room. As your parents, we have always had signing authority on your behalf. We simply helped complete the paperwork. The implication was staggering. They had forged my signature on a title transfer. Moreover, they had apparently searched my childhood bedroom during some previous visit to locate paperwork they had no right to access. The title had indeed been in that desk, alongside insurance documents and restoration receipts, as I had been organizing a portfolio of the project before my trip. You forged my signature, I stated, the legal reality clarifying in my mind. That is a crime. Several crimes, actually. Marcus laughed dismissively. Do not be so dramatic. It is just a car, and parents sign stuff for their kids all the time. Besides, you can always build another one if you are so obsessed. My mother attempted a placating tone. Damon, you have always been so good with your hands, and Marcus has always loved that car. He has never shown the slightest interest in that car, I interrupted. He has actively mocked my restoration work for 2 years. Well, people change, my father interjected. The point is, the transfer is complete. The car belongs to Marcus now. We expected you to be more mature about this, considering how successful you are with your career. Marcus deserves something special too. The conversation devolved from there into familiar patterns. My parents minimizing my feelings, Marcus making snide remarks about my selfishness, and increasingly transparent attempts to manipulate me into accepting their narrative. When I demanded to see the paperwork, my father reluctantly produced a title transfer with a signature that bore only a passing resemblance to my own. This is forgery, I said quietly, photographing the document with my phone, and auto theft. I am going to give you one opportunity to return my car and the original title. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to report this to the police. Their reactions revealed much about our family dynamic. My mother gasped, as if I had physically struck her. My father's face hardened with the same expression he had worn whenever I had defied his authority throughout childhood. Marcus simply laughed clearly, believing this was an empty threat. You would not dare, my father stated flatly. We are your family. Family does not steal from family, I responded. I paid for that car. I restored it with my own hands. The registration and insurance are in my name alone. What you have done is illegal regardless of our relationship. My mother began crying, a strategy that had often succeeded in the past when family conflicts arose. How can you even think of involving police? What would the neighbors say? What about your father's reputation in the community? I looked between them, my entitled brother, manipulative mother, and authoritarian father, and realized with startling clarity that their concern was not for my feelings or rights, but solely for how their actions might reflect on them if exposed. You have 24 hours to return the car and original documents, I said finally. After that, I will file a police report for auto theft and forgery. As I turned to leave, my father delivered what he clearly believed was his trump card. If you do this, you are no longer part of this family. Think carefully about that before you make threats. I paused only briefly before responding. I will be expecting the car by tomorrow evening, and walked away. The 24 hours passed without contact from any family member. No apologetic phone call, no text message arranging the return of the vehicle, no acknowledgement whatsoever of the severity of the situation. As the deadline approached, I prepared the documentation I would need. The original bill of sale restoration, receipts, insurance policy, registration maintenance records, and photographs documenting my ownership from purchase through completion. Filing the police report was surreal, sitting across from an officer, explaining that yes, I wanted to report my own parents and brother for auto theft and forgery. The officer, to his credit, maintained professional composure, though his raised eyebrows conveyed his surprise at the unusual family dynamic. You understand this will likely result in criminal charges against your family members, he clarified. I understand, I confirmed, and I am prepared to pursue this fully. What I could not have anticipated was how quickly events would unfold from that point, or how dramatically the consequences would alter our family forever. The investigation proceeded with unexpected efficiency. The detective assigned to the case, a no-nonsense woman named Rodriguez, with 20 years of experience, recognized the clear-cut nature of the crime, despite its unusual family context. The forged signature was blatant, the documentation of my ownership, comprehensive, and perhaps most damning, my parents had apparently bragged to several friends about their clever solution to getting Marcus the classic car he suddenly coveted after seeing how much attention my restoration work had received. These friends, interviewed as part of the routine investigation, provided statements confirming my parents had openly discussed taking the title from my old desk and signing it themselves, apparently never considering this might constitute a serious crime rather than a simple family matter. 3 days after filing the report, I received a call from Detective Rodriguez. We have spoken with the district attorney's office, she informed me. They are proceeding with charges of grand theft auto and forgery against your parents. Your brother is being charged as an accessory after the fact, since he knowingly received and retained stolen property. The reality of actual criminal charges landed with the force of physical impact. Despite my resolve in filing the report, some part of me had perhaps expected the official involvement would simply pressure my family into returning the car without further consequences. The detective, sensing my hesitation, continued more gently. Mr. Wilson, I have been doing this job a long time. I understand this is difficult. You can still decide not to pursue charges, if that is your preference. After a moment's reflection, I reaffirmed my decision. They had every opportunity to return the car and resolve this privately. They chose not to. Please proceed with the case. What followed was a cascading series of family earthquakes. My parents served with formal charges at their home, in full view of those same neighbors whose opinions my mother had been so concerned about, responded with incredulous outrage, followed by intensified pressure tactics. My phone filled with voicemails and texts from extended family members who had been fed a highly edited version of events. How could you do this to your own parents? Over a car? Really? You need to drop these ridiculous charges immediately. My Aunt Susan, my mother's older sister, went so far as to show up at my workplace, creating a scene in the reception area until security escorted her out. My grandfather, normally a voice of reason, called to suggest that family matters should stay within the family, though his tone suggested he recognized the gravity of what my parents had done. Meanwhile, Marcus embarked on a campaign of harassment, driving my car past my apartment at odd hours, posting mocking social media updates about his new ride, and eventually escalating to thinly veiled threats about what might happen to the vehicle if I continued pursuing charges. I documented each incident, meticulously forwarding evidence to Detective Rodriguez and my newly retained attorney. The district attorney's office added harassment charges to Marcus's growing legal troubles, and a judge issued a temporary restraining order prohibiting him from coming within 500 feet of my residence or workplace. Through all this external chaos, I experienced a strange internal clarity. Years of normalized boundary violations and emotional manipulation crystallized into recognizable patterns. What had once seemed like ordinary, if frustrating family dynamics, now revealed themselves as genuinely toxic behaviors that had shaped my understanding of relationships and self-worth in profoundly negative ways. My parents' defense strategy shifted as the court date approached. Their attorney attempted to frame the situation as a simple misunderstanding, a well-intentioned gift gone wrong due to procedural oversights. This narrative collapsed when faced with evidence of the deliberate forgery and subsequent harassment. Their fallback position that, as parents, they had implicit authority to manage their adult son's property was dismissed by the judge with barely concealed incredulity. The defendant is 30 years old, financially independent, and the clear legal owner of the vehicle in question, he noted during a preliminary hearing. The notion that parenthood confers some kind of lifetime authority over an adult child's property is without legal merit. Throughout these proceedings, my parents maintained a posture of righteous indignation, seemingly unable to comprehend that their actions constituted actual crimes rather than acceptable parental prerogatives. This disconnection from legal reality ultimately undermined their defense and accelerated the case toward its inevitable conclusion. On a rainy Tuesday morning, after multiple delays and failed attempts at plea negotiations, my parents stood before the court and heard the judge deliver his verdict guilty on all counts. The sentences were relatively lenient given their lack of prior criminal history: 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and full restitution for any damages to the vehicle. Marcus, who had accepted a plea deal earlier in the process, received similar probation terms, plus an additional restraining order prohibiting contact with me for 1 year. The car was ordered, returned to me immediately. When I arrived at the impound lot, where it had been held as evidence, the sight of my once pristine Mustang nearly broke me. In a final act of spite, Marcus had apparently taken a key to the paint, gouged the leather upholstery, and poured something caustic into the gas tank that had damaged the fuel system. The restoration work I had completed with such care would now need to be substantially repeated. As I arranged for the damaged vehicle to be transported to a specialized restoration shop, I received a text message from my father, the first direct communication since his arrest. "I hope you are satisfied with what you have done to this family." In that moment, I recognized that genuine reconciliation might never be possible with people so fundamentally unable to acknowledge the wrongness of their actions. The realization brought grief, but also an unexpected sense of freedom. The ties that had bound me to toxic patterns had been severed not by my choice alone, but by the natural consequences of their own behavior. 6 months have passed since the court case concluded. The Mustang has been fully restored once again, this time with additional security features and storage at a specialized classic car facility rather than my home garage. The second restoration became unexpectedly therapeutic, a reclaiming of not just the vehicle, but my autonomy and boundaries. The family landscape has transformed permanently. My parents completed their community service hours with the same rigid compliance they had always valued, but the mandatory counseling sessions have apparently prompted some tentative self-reflection. Last month, I received a letter from my mother, not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement that things could have been handled differently. My father remains more entrenched in his position, though his communications have evolved from outright blame to careful inquiries about moving forward as a family. I respond selectively, maintaining firm boundaries about what I will discuss and what behaviors I will accept. The process is uncomfortable but necessary. Marcus continues his pattern of entitlement, having recently approached our grandparents for money to buy a different sports car since Damon ruined his birthday gift. To their credit, they declined, suggesting instead that he focus on maintaining steady employment advice that has apparently strained that relationship as well. The most surprising development has been the reconnection with extended family members I had previously known only superficially. My cousin Eric, who restores motorcycles in Colorado, reached out after hearing about the situation through family channels. What they did was completely wrong, he stated simply in his first email. "I would love to see the Mustang sometime when you feel comfortable sharing it." This straightforward acknowledgement of the fundamental wrongness of my parents' actions without qualification or family loyalty caveats opened the door to a genuine friendship based on shared interests and mutual respect. Similar connections have formed with an uncle on my mother's side and several cousins who recognized the situation for what it was rather than what family mythology tried to make it. Perhaps most importantly, the car community, that had always been my informal support system, rallied with practical assistance during the second restoration process. Fellow enthusiasts offered rare parts technical advice and even workshop space when needed. These connections based on shared passion rather than obligation have evolved into friendships that feel more authentic than many of my family relationships ever did. The legal consequences of the case have reverberated in unexpected ways. My parents' standing in their community has indeed suffered, though primarily because their actions became public knowledge rather than because of any criminal record. Several of their friends have privately contacted me to express support, suggesting that my parents' behavior had crossed boundaries with others as well over the years. The financial impact has been substantial for them. Between legal fees, restitution for the damage to the Mustang, and the community's diminished trust affecting my father's real estate business, they have had to significantly downsize their lifestyle. Marcus, whose job history was already spotty, has struggled to find employment with a criminal record, though he typically frames this as everyone else's fault, rather than a consequence of his choices. As for me, the experience clarified values and boundaries I had previously allowed to remain fuzzy in the name of family harmony. I have become more selective about where I invest emotional energy, more confident in expressing needs directly, and more comfortable with the reality that healthy relationships require mutual respect rather than one-sided accommodation. The Mustang, now more securely mine than ever, has become not just a beloved vehicle, but a symbol of reclaimed autonomy. Each time I take it for a weekend drive along coastal roads, the engine's distinctive rumble serves as a reminder that some things are worth protecting, even when that protection comes at significant personal cost. Recently, I was invited to display the car at a regional classic automobile show. As I detailed every chrome accent and leather surface in preparation, I realized how completely the vehicle had transformed from a source of trauma back into a source of pride. The blue ribbon it won in its class felt like validation, not just of the restoration work, but of the difficult choices that allowed it to remain in my care. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who crossed important boundaries? What did it cost you, and what did you gain in the process? Share your experiences. In the comments below, your story might help someone facing a similar difficult choice right now. If this account of setting necessary boundaries resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up to help others find it. And if you know someone struggling with family members who do not respect their property or autonomy, share this as a reminder that sometimes the hardest boundaries to enforce are the most necessary ones. Thank you for listening, and remember that healthy relationships, even with family, should be built on mutual respect rather than obligation or control.